I want to talk about emerging market currencies, and also I want to talk about how the dollar is dying, but it doesn't look like that it's dying, but it's actually what's happening. Also want to talk about companies buying back their own shares and inflating their own share prices is similar to the death of the dollar. When an entity or a bank or a government artificially pumps up the value of their currency or their bonds or the shares of a company, and they don't have the economic base that supports such a price, or supports or has an interest in these bonds or in these dollars or in these then what will happen is that some players in the market or some buyers in Middle East, or they are so tied to these shares or to these dollars or to these bonds that they will pay the extra money. They don't care. They'll print local currency and they'll go and buy these things and store them or trade them. But I'm sorry, if a government or a country has engaged in militarism, or they have repelled or expelled or dissuaded customers or buyers and gotten rid of many of them, then they'll be working in a diminishing economic base, which means everything looks great, the share prices are high, and the value of the dollar relative to local currencies is high, and everything looks rosy, just like Trump was saying in his UN speech. But in actuality, the people who are engaged in real economic processes, or the buyers in foreign countries, or they see, hey, we are not using these dollars or these shares, and they're kind of irrelevant, or they have died by irrelevance, and then doesn't matter what price they are at, they are a fiction. They are not really the currency we are all using. Well, another thing that I like to use is that in the past, when mathematicians they try to model economic processes or processes happening in nature, they would have to resort to statistics, and with the statistics you have a sample space and you try to sample it as democratically or as distributedly as you can in this universe, to get a feel for different segments of it, and then you construct analytic or a mathematical formulation to represent different processes going on in that sample space, in that universe. And if the number of samples is low, then your model might not be as accurate as you might think. Or another way of doing this would be to increase the number of samples so that the model or the formula fit better to this universe and the processes that are going in it. But then now we have data mining, and also many servers, they have every bit of information about the sample universe. For example, say you take a large hospital, and they have all the information about every single patient that has heart problems. So they don't need to construct a formula or a general idea of what might happen. They already have all the information, and they have also seen the progression of the disease, so they could construct a real-time model of heart problems. And if, for example, you have a younger patient with the heart problem, they could look at this universe and the data they have and make a very realistic progression analysis of what will happen to him as time goes on. So well, I kind of do that more old-fashioned way, because like I said in my other video, I look at some small transactions or business that I personally conducted and see how it could be expanded into a greater universe, what conclusions I can get from that. Well, the title of this video is Disconnecting Currencies. That means that the local currencies, the cryptocurrencies, the currencies like ruble, yuan, they don't really need US dollar, because they do a tremendous amount of business. The Chinese really don't need to care what the dollar is doing, because their economy, their economic base is not tied to United States. The same goes with Russia. So these currencies, even if they were connected in the past, they are disconnecting. And I heard that Putin was saying that for many countries you can just do business in your local currencies. For example, many Iranians, it would be better for them to have the Russian ruble, hold on to that or do business with that, because Russia doesn't have all this history with us, and also does not undermine our sovereignty. You can buy and sell, travel. There's no sanctions. There's no aggravation by their immigration or their government. This would be a better currency, and if that currency, the ruble or yuan, they are not inflated artificially, then that's just so much the better. And also in the future, these are the currencies that will appreciate, and people will hang on to them simply because they have a utility. You could spend them. They are not like a US dollar. You can buy them, and then the US dollar, you have to store it. It's just has become something like a store of value, because you know that their US government will come with guns and men and blast you away if you don't value their money as they say you should, or there is hope in the future their economy will do something, like they'll re-elect Trump, or they'll bring in AI, something like that. It is a store of value, but when you want to spend this currency, there is so much going on with them, and their problem with militarism, and even going to United States, like say somebody had a lot of dollars and they wanted to come in and enjoy Disney or tourist sites. There's just so much going on. All of that, it has been diminishing or has diminished. So it's not a good currency to spend. Anyhow, a lot of people, they don't pay attention to to how damaging tariffs, aggravation of foreigners, or passing laws that are anti-immigration, or simply not respecting foreign sovereignty is to economy, because a lot of the economy of many places is not entirely dependent on what the crop the people that are in there produce. Is more dependent on the money that came from tourism, it came from foreigners that have problems. For example, many Muslim countries or Arab countries are going to Russians and buying S-300s because they are very vulnerable to, for example, Israeli bombing their cities or their military installations. They need anti-air defense. So this is money that the Russian government makes, but it's not the money that the average Russian made from growing potatoes and selling that off, but it's money that it's a particular company, high-tech company that produces these weapons, makes for the Russian government. So the economy of a given place is not dependent on exactly what the people produce. Well, another thing to look for is that most of the money that circulates in the economy or people spend it is not the money that's spent on investment. For example, a lot of when the United States put and EU put the sanctions on Europe, the Russians they went back to producing agricultural goods using their own land. They have a lot of land, even though the quality wasn't like exactly like the French or the other Europeans. There's no special technology you need to grow potatoes. Anybody can grow, and if you have some elements of mass production, like you have agricultural machinery, you can produce a lot of it. They have a lot of land, and their money, ruble, is tied or represents this production, which is to them is very cheap. So where does the dollar come in this whole thing? Like it's not like oil that you must first go buy dollars and then go buy oil from Arabs. But then again, almost everything is becoming a deflationary kind of commodity. And there is a lot of oil in Russia itself, in Iran, and I want to use an example. I send some small amount of money to my mother. I use the Hawala system, and then for a little while, my sister's husband was interested in buying these dollars, and they had a relative here. And then, but after like a few months, like 5 months, he started complaining. Well, first his relative in Canada complained that, hey, we don't really want this, and their price is wrong. And then my mother started complaining that, well, her husband Abbas, her daughter's husband, my sister Patty's Abbas, is not giving the right amount of the money for these dollars, and the dollar price has jacked up, and blah, blah. So we switched, and we're now using a third party. And then while this was all going on, I think the dollar was back then like 7,000 Tuman, something like that. And then, then now it's like 17,000 Tuman. but at the same time, the Iranian government or the central bank won't buy and sell dollars. So there is a small base of people that want dollars because they want to buy exotic or luxury goods from Europe or from the Arabs in UAE or south of Iran. So the price, because the banks don't support it, it has been just escalating. My sister was very kind of puzzled what to do with all this, and she was saying, I told her, don't use like someone from the family or your husband to buy these dollars. Use a third party, whoever who's desperate enough wanna go to Timbuktu or to Luxembourg and spend these dollars, or just sell it to them and just use the money, the local money or the tuman to do whatever that helps you in there. But then she kind of thought about it, and she said, I think you are very sharp about this, but what I'm saying from this discussion is that the price or the value of the dollar is artificial. It's just a show. And if you want to buy like 2 kilo of ground potatoes, the Iranian farmers make ground potatoes, and they've been selling it in tuman, the local currency, and it's not like the price of potatoes is gonna like hyperbolically go up. People won't buy it because they know there is other potatoes you can get from Russia, you can get from Afghanistan. There's nothing special about it, and so this is, I think, how the dollar will die. The economic base that represents or useful for existence or use of this currency will continuously shrink because of hostilities of foreigners that have been raked and kicked around, and then but the price will just continuously escalate. But there will come at a point that it will lose its total value as currency, because currency at some point, anybody who has these dollars, even at very inflated price, will want to spend those dollars, will want to buy something, a luxury good, or I think a lot of shrinkage has also happened because many ordinary people, they have fancy or fantasy of using foreign currency to go on, like as a tourist, go to foreign countries, stay or do this and that. But with all the aggravation that the Western countries have created, ISIS and terrorism that they sponsored, and they are making it very unsafe for Muslims or foreigners to go into Europe or spend the money. So actually, a lot of Muslims, they have a lot of money and they could easily afford to go to France or wherever, but the atmosphere is very hostile. I was reading that many French boutiques, the French, they sell very nice clothes, colognes, perfumes. They're very chic. Also, the furniture is very nice, the wine, but it was saying that they're closing down, or their economic base is shrinking because of their population deep hostility towards the foreigners, towards tourism. They feel that their identity as French has been threatened. So this base is completely shrinking, whereas their money or Europe, I don't know what it's doing, might still be holding their value. But I would say that money, no matter how much a store of value or how good of a store of value it is, at some point somebody would want to spend that money. If the money has lost its utility because of the stupid things that Western governments have done, then it's really worthless. Or at some point the people will realize, hey, I bought these dollars for 17,000 2 months, but what really can I do with it? You know, when I was trying to use a different metric to value the dollar, actually, for example, I would take an agricultural product, say lettuces. Well, in the dollar store, right here, I could go all day long and buy a head of lettuce, or sometimes I get 3 heads of lettuce, or a little box, a styrofoam box, or no, see-through PVC container. I could get a nice head or even 2 heads of lettuce. Or how much is that worth? That kind of lettuce would be worth in rubles or in tuman, I think a lot less than the dollar that this investor bought for 17,000 tuman. You get my drift? I mean, at some point, people are gonna make the connection that, hey, this is very overvalued. This currency is very overvalued. Well, I think some analysts, they know this. I was listening to Jim Willey or Gregory Mannarino, and they know that the dollar is going to die. In fact, some of them said the dollar will appreciate and then suddenly will disappear. Something like that. I think Peter Schiff also said something like that. But when the mechanism is kind of mysterious to many people, you're gonna have to kind of look into it. Well, thank you for being in my YouTube channel. My stuff is research, and you don't really find this kind of analysis in many places on the internet. Please subscribe and leave your comment. Okay, thank you.